everybody. So last video, what you saw me doing was you saw me forging out this billet of steel, trying to recover this billet of steel. I canned it to help encapsulate the material so that it's clean. Is because this is a big old chunk off a couple slabs. So this is a process that I've been calling offset or off square tip weld. Yeah, I think that's what I've been calling it. But anyways, off square tip weld, and I got the forge going right now. That's what that sound is in the background. What's up? We got one person in the audience today so far. Jump in and say what's up, please, when you get in here. Love seeing people in the house. Okay, so now, these are the two slabs. Got a little flange right here. These are the two slabs. Get my fat fingers out of the way. That I cut off. Right? So this is what the pattern looks like on one half of it, right? And so now I cut a second slab. This is book matched right here across this center line. These both originally were on this billet like this, right? Two chunks, and then I cut them off and boom. Now I'm going to be tip welding those together. So the move now is to let's see, I don't know if I have a pin handy. Well, I guess I can use this as a pointer. So eventually what I'm going to do with these slabs is I'm going to forge them into this shape right here, right? And with a pair of them, I will then TIG weld them together and forge weld this material, the final weld in the material being right down the center line. I'm going to forge weld these together. Today during this stream, all I'm doing is prepping. So I'm taking this shape and I'm forging it into this shape. Now how am I going to do that? So this point, this side of the billet already comes to a point, right? It already comes to a point. So what I want is for these corners to get pushed around to the center line. So again, you can see the similarity between the bottoms of both of these, right? Basically the same. But how am I pushing this around? Well, I'm going to use this inside corner as a pivot point and bring this long point around to the center. Now, that's a big pain in the butt, and this material is pretty thick. It's about 1/2 inch thick, 1 centimeter or so thick. And so, I'm gonna forge right on this corner. I'm gonna start by forging down in this corner and lifting the material. I'm not gonna forge it necessarily flat. I'm gonna forge onto the corner and have this slightly lifted off of my anvil surface. So as I'm pushing this down, I'm encouraging this tip to come around. And that will eventually become a piece like this. So this original inside corner was somewhere around here. And then I forged this point in and drug this tip around, I forged this inside corner in and then pushed this tip around to the center line of the material. I'm going to do that on both halves so that they come together like this. This is a different pattern. This is a different example. But I'm doing the exact same thing as I did here. And then from here, once this is welded, or once I got them forged to this shape, I'll clean off the inside of this joint, make sure it's nice and clean. I'll probably blunt the tips just a little bit so that I have to reforge or reform that point. That will encourage the material to come together and to establish a solid forge weld. And I have to do the same thing back here, right? This will become the heel of the knife, the bolster of the knife, and this will become the tip. That is the same situation with this guy. Okay? It's probably easier to see it if I do this. these bottom corners, but I am worried about this long point in this inside corner and shoving this long point around to the center line, using this inside corner as a pivot point, basically. The forge is nice and hot. I got my 2 pieces of steel. The trick to doing this properly is making sure that everything, or that you keep track of which points you want to be the inside corner, because you want it to forge around that inside corner to that center line. So, nice, we got 24 people in here. Jump in, please, and say what's up. I love seeing people jump in and say what's up. And anyways, let me know where you're watching from. Again, happy Labor Day. I don't know if I said that already, but happy Labor Day to especially folks in the States. AP Patriot, what's up? Happy Labor Day to people in the States. Hope you're getting a well-deserved break and taking some time to remember that working hard is important. Housemaid, by the way, shout out to my homie Brian House. So, I am going to get one of these chunks put in the forge, and we're gonna rock and roll. So, here we go. Let's get you right here. Remember, I want to take it from the same, they got a book match across it, original center line, right? So I gotta actually keep track, figure out the original orientation. It's kind of tricky right now for me. And then I'm gonna book match them across that center line. All right, there we go. That is our center line right there. So this is our original center line. You can see how the pattern flows straight across that cut. Now I'm going to book match them around that. Now, it's not a bad idea to mark these inside corners. What I will do though is, well, actually, never mind. I am gonna go grab a pen. I'll be right back. Okay. I got my pen. I got my inside corners. I have them book matched across that cut line, just like you would with a slab of blocks or a set of scales, handle scales. That's going to be my inside corner on both pieces. So when I put this in the forge, I want that up so that when I pull it out, it's already oriented in the position I need, and I'm going to start forging that down immediately. And when I put this piece in, I'm going to do the exact same thing. In fact, I'm going to mark this corner, the inside corner on this side as well, so that when I pull it out, boom, I start forging right there, okay? All right. So, piece number 1, going in. Now, while that's heating up, we can chat a little bit more. If anybody's got any questions, we can address those now. That's gonna take a couple minutes. Let's see. I can sit right here. I'm sitting at my welding bench, which is a damn mess. Anyways, I'm sitting at my welding bench. Marcelo Laurato, what's up? Uruguay. Let's see, flip the camera around. Okay, so got that slab in there. It's heating up. Forge is nice and hot. So again, I'm just gonna get it hot to the point where I can start forging on that inside corner. And I know it's a little abstract, probably. I'm sorry, I'm sitting on my keys and it's killing my ass. It's a little abstract of a concept. Partly because, as far as I'm aware, I'm the only person that does this. But hopefully, more people will start doing it soon, which is why I'm sharing this. So anyways, I'm gonna, yeah. So I think one thing I can do is try to illustrate what's going on here. Okay. So, let's see. That's obviously a lot more exaggerated from what I actually have. And then this is going to be my inside corner, my pivot corner. So I'm going to start by forging right into that corner. That's going to start blunting that corner. And because the workpiece is going to be off the anvil, off the anvil a bit, just this corner here is going to be touching the anvil. So hopefully, while I'm shoving that in, that's bringing this long point around. And then, let's see if I can draw a partial step or intermediate step. Which will cause it to start to do this. So it's blunting on this side, and it'll also be blunting on this side. And so I'm just gonna keep shoving this corner in until it's nice and flat in here, and I bring that corner around to create a piece that looks like that. Because I want that pattern, or I want this point to meet in, I want everything to meet in this middle, this center line. Now this original corner, I'll keep marking it, oh whoops, right here, on each one of these pieces. So this is the original corner. And as I start to forge that corner in, it blunts, and as I bring this outside corner around to the center line, that corner, that inside corner stays there. And that point, this point, just realized it would help if I drew kind of an imaginary center line. Okay. I'm working this outside, or this long point, to that center line, which eventually gets to here, which is exemplified. Where'd that piece go? Oh, there we go. Is exemplified by this piece. Right? In this piece, I've done that. So this phase is all about shoving these long points around to that center point, and then I'm going to book match them, weld them back together, just TIG weld. I'm going to TIG fuse those points back together, or the center line back together. Again, keep oxygen out, keep everything nice and clean. Set those welds on the next video. Set those welds and get and then get forging on a knife, really. Once those welds are set, then at that point, I can start forging a knife out of it. So, Michael Powell, very cool. Never thought of trying to pattern develop that way. As far as I understand, Michael, nobody has. It did used to be a common practice. I'm gonna draw something else for y'all. It did used to be a common practice for people to make a pattern and say it's like twist bars or something like that, right? So it's a multi-bar twist pattern, right? So they'd weld their bars together, and then they'd have a long homogeneous piece. And then what they would do is they would forge the material, and they would forge a bend in that bar. Right? And then what they would do is they would cut that piece off, the bend out, that off, and then they would make a knife. They would make a sword out of it. You can even book match it that way. Honestly, there probably have been swords that have been forge welded that way, where they hot cut it and then forge weld it down the center line, and they have two matching pieces. They forge weld it down the center line. But this approach where you're not cutting any material away, I hate I hate material waste. And to me, now obviously somebody could take that and forge it into a knife, that chunk of material, because at this point, this bar is probably still a 1/2 inch thick, right? You could forge something out of that chunk of material and not let it go to waste, but the pattern that presents on that material probably isn't the most interesting presentation of material versus what is left behind, or what is going to become the actual blade. Those scraps don't have to go to waste, but they will be less interesting. And so my goal was to not lose any material. And so my thought was, okay, well, what if I can shove that corner in? Sorry, that arrow's not drawn very well. Shove this corner in and bring this long point around to the center line, and then book match them. So essentially, instead of cutting that, forging that, and then book matching across that center line. I had a chat with Steve Schwarzer at Blade Show. I think wasn't this year, it was last year at Blade Show. I showed him this approach because I was curious. He's been around, Steve Schwarzer has been around for a long time. He has been following Damascus making for that whole time. He's following all new developments, any new stuff people are doing, and I asked him about it, and he said he had never seen it. Now, while his opinion is very valuable to me, I also asked JD Smith just this last April at a knife show. I showed him that approach as well, and he also said he had never seen that before. And he is credited with reintroducing the tip weld, the traditional tip weld, which is cutting a V out of the end of a rectangular bar, cutting basically a fish mouth out of that bar, and then forging those tips together. And so my thought was like, well, you can do it like that. Why can't you do it individually with two separate pieces without losing any material and getting the material to weld together to forge out a cool blade? So my steel is nice and hot. I'm gonna pull it out. I'm gonna try to get this camera set up so you guys can see what's happening over here. Let's see. I'm gonna pivot you and then drop this leg down. Whoa. And I'm gonna angle this just a little bit. All right. Don't laugh too hard at me. I always struggle with this process. Not only is it new in the world, as far as I'm aware, it's also new to me. So like I said, I already have my billet oriented with that corner in the position I need it to be. So I'm using my flat bar tongs. I'm going to make sure this is clean on that side before I start forging. And I'm just going to start shoving this in. Now, I want to check it every once in a while because that material also wants to spread. You want to make sure you're hitting it hard enough. So you can see it's already starting to come around. Sorry. Yep. There's that shove in that corner that I was talking about. But the material is also spreading. It's mushrooming, right? I'm going to do just a little bit of tappy work to flatten it because it also wants to bend on you. So, keep your work flat, keep it hot. Let's bring you guys back over here. So yeah, keep your work flat, keep it hot. Little River Forge, what's up? Jeez. Okay. Try not to mess with the tripod too much because I got to bring it back over there and set it up. I'm going to bring that back up to temperature. But anyways, and that's basically it. And you keep working on it. So you not only are working on that inside corner, you can also flip the piece over. Now that we know what side is going to be that long point, that long tip that we're forging or that we're pulling around, we can flip it over now and now start forging that long point down as well. We don't have to necessarily work just from the one direction. In fact, it's not ideal to work just from the one direction. Shove it in and then pull it around. All right, Little River is saying, between you and me and Neil, I've been trying to get my chef knife game up watching y'all work. Thank you very much. Ingrid Forge in the house, my friend. What's up, buddy? Looking good? Thank you. I hope you're having a good Labor Day. Steel is nice and hot, actually, and it's a very neutral flame. I'm gonna adjust the flame real quick so that it is carburizing environment in there, which means there's less oxygen than fuel. Right now, there's a pretty equal share, if not more oxygen than fuel. So I want to make it a fuel-rich environment inside the forge, reduce the heftiness of the forge scale that is developing on the outside of that steel. By reducing the oxygen, the available oxygen, you're also helping to reduce the forge scale that grows on your material while it's in the forge. I'm gonna adjust that real quick. All right, here we go. And the steel is actually pretty hot. Here, let me turn this around so you can watch the flame change out the front. I'm gonna set this back up for the anvil. Alright, watch the front of the forge. Just real quick, let's see. The front of the forge. I'm gonna adjust the flame. You'll see it soften. You'll see fuel escaping to combust. You can also hear a difference. So this is a fuel-rich environment inside the forge. The fuel has to escape the forge to combust versus a neutral flame. You can also hear the difference, right? So I'm gonna get a soft flame coming out the front. It doesn't have to be super huge, just a little bit. So I'm gonna turn this off because I don't want the flame coming right at my face while I'm forging. All right. So now I'm actually gonna turn it over. And I'm going to forge it from the other direction now, trying to shove that point down. Straighten it out a little bit. Point, it could be easy for somebody to lose track of which side's supposed to be coming which way. But look at the bottom, right? You want a long point on the center line of the steel. So a long point on the bottom, down the center line, and a long point at the top. So we're just gonna keep going. It's gonna take a few rounds. We'll get there. If this is doing kind of like a weird little fish lip thing right here, if it does that too much more, I'm probably going to get in there and grind that off real quick and then continue forging that tip over. All right. Let's see, we got a question here. It says, are you doing an integral? That is going to be the goal, is to forge an integral out of this. Excuse me. The goal is to forge an integral. The material right now is 1/2 inch thick, which isn't very thick. That's kind of pushing it in regards to thickness for an integral. But what my plan is to, is when you upset the material and isolate the material that becomes the bolster and the tang of the integral, if you get it nice and hot and you mush it down all in one go, that will help beef up that area, because that material isn't going to forge directly down. It's also going to pooch out. That mass has to go somewhere, so it's going to bulge out, or it's going to upset, which is a blacksmithing term. The material is going to upset and bulge out, and that will beef up and give me my material that I need for my integral. Let's see, where are those other examples? Okay. So, these are the other examples, right? So I'm gonna TIG weld them together, each half together. What's up, Rich? Happy Labor Day, bud. I'm gonna TIG weld these pieces together after cleaning them up and making sure they're nice and flat and mate really nicely. Right now, they're not like exactly perfect. So I'm gonna clean them up, make them nice and flat. It's not gonna lose a ton of material doing that, and then I'm gonna forge this knife out. So that's what I did here is exactly what I'm trying to do with each of these halves of this slab. So, and I'm watching the time. I am trying to keep these live streams somewhat short. I'm probably actually gonna just stream all the way through. I did start looking at editing videos, or working on editing these videos. They're gonna be available. So these live streams are available publicly. But what I'm gonna do is, there's a lot of dead time, like between me changing the angle of the camera. Some of this stuff that I'm saying to you guys, or this banter, is not necessarily the most crucial information to know or understand in the forging process. So I'll be cutting out some of that stuff to kind of streamline the videos, because right now I think I have 6 streams at this point. This is the 7th one. There's a lot of video time. There's a lot of it, and we're not trying to make 7, 8, 9, 10, 12-hour long videos, right? So I'm gonna pare it down to the work that's actually being done for the most part. I'm sure there's gonna be a couple little things in there where I'm grinding or where I'm talking that I'll probably keep, but for the most part, I'm gonna be paring them down just to the work. And then in the edited videos, which will be available on the Patreon, I'll also do some voiceover so that you can hear like me. I'll be talking about what I'm doing and how I'm doing and all that kind of stuff, or why I'm doing certain things, or little nuances that you might not necessarily pick up just by watching. So, nice and hot again. Let's forge some more. On my tong hand, because there's a lot of heat coming out of that forge. What's everybody got planned for their Labor Day? Oh, actually, we got a question in here from Little River Forge. Well, while I'm talking, jump in and let me know what you're doing for Labor Day if you're in the States and you're celebrating. All right, Little River Forge says I gotta go. Definitely check out the rest of the stuff putting up. I got a slip joint coming out of the temper. Cool, sounds good. Thank you for sharing. Hell yeah, man. All right. We're gonna just let this come up to temp. Rich, what are you working on right now? Gabe, what do you got going on right now? You guys got stuff on the bench? Looks like we got 12 people in the stream, at least right now. Jump in and say what's up. Let me know where you're watching from, what you got going on for today. If you're celebrating Labor Day, if you're doing work, if you are going to a barbecue, what you got? What you got? I'm actually gonna pull this pressure down too. It's getting really hot really fast, and I like the steel to kind of come up the temperature, forging temperature evenly, rather than like the outside getting really hot while the inside's still just a little bit colder, not really heating up at a very even temp. And the outside's always gonna heat up faster than the inside, but ideally you can dial in a temperature where they kind of come up together. Okay, Rich is in the house. He says, doing a little bit of guard work this morning. Family stuff the rest of the day. Yeah, I got some stuff going on this afternoon as well. I guess kind of regardless of where I'm at, I'm probably going to cut the feed probably around 12:30 Pacific Standard Time. Because I got stuff going on today. I'm allowed to have a life too, right? I think. I don't know. Steel's hot again. Let's do it. All right. Definitely starting to get that long point over to this center line on this edge right here, right? I'm shoving it over. You all might have also noticed I started forging a little farther back. So I started forging here and then kind of working forward. That's to kind of help push that material that direction. The real key is working it hot. Work it hot. With this thing so that this is a little bit more adjustable for me, because otherwise this back and forth is going to really start becoming annoying. Sorry. Alright, this is the kind of stuff I'll be cutting out of the video. So I appreciate your patience and being here during the live stream. In the Patreon, where this edited video is going to live, this stuff's getting cut out. English Forge says, sending out the Damascus knife for 1911, finishing up the knife for the German charity. When I finish out with the hardening, putting up a handle on a chef's knife in Florida. Michael Powell, thank you, sir, for jumping in, chiming in where you're at. Again, let's see, what's sitting on something funny? A glove. Okay. Whew. Thankfully, it's not too hot right now. Steel's looking nice and hot. I'm trying to decide, I still got a little bit of that weird fish lip kind of situation going on. I think part of that too is the way that I was forging that corner in. Instead of going straight into that corner, I actually kind of came down a little bit more like this, which caused that material to kind of mush this way, which is giving me like this funky little fish lip right in front of this, on this face. And so, for this one, I'm gonna try to do a good job and be a good boy and shove that in directly square, like split that, or I guess come in at a tangential angle, I believe that's what that's called. Rich, Gabe, Michael, you guys might be able to know that exactly. But anyways, split the difference between this face, the angle of this face and this face, and come in at a tangential angle perfectly right in the middle, and that will mush the material straight in rather than coming in too high and mushing it down on the face and creating a weird fish lip. But because it's not at a steep angle, it's hard sometimes to not come down more vertically than at an angle, because you're trying not to shove the stuff around too much. But anyways, it'll get cleaned out. All right, steel's hot again. Let's go! Fitting up a handle on the chef's knife. What kind of chef's knife are you making, Michael Powell? What kind of chef's knife? All right, let's angle this back down. So, I think the real trick, and I also want to try to make sure this line is pretty straight down that center, so that when I get to cleaning up, things aren't too wonky on this material. And also, if I hit it, kind of do lighter blows across this center line face, that will help to kind of spread the material a little bit, which isn't necessarily the worst thing. Yeah, look at that beautiful roof. My goodness. Okay, so I'll do one last forging round, just kind of tune things up on that piece, and then we'll call it good. And then I'll throw the other half in there and do the same damn thing. 37 minutes. Not too bad. That's pretty quick. The trick, having the right kind of tongs to grab your material, doesn't necessarily have to be these kind of flat bar tongs. Something you can securely hold on to that piece with, because you're forging at these weird angles and you're not necessarily forging flat against the surface of the anvil. That piece of steel wants to jump all over the place on you, right? So having a secure hold is crucial. Something I've started doing, especially if I'm going to be hitting hard, I'm going to show you guys the anvil surface again. I have my tongs, right? And instead of just holding the piece and just gripping the hell out of these tongs and holding on for dear life, I've actually started doing this thing. I'm going to pretend like the anvil's right in front of me here. I hold the tongs and I'll actually use my whole arm and I'll shove the tongs into my hip, like right at my belt line. I'll shove the tongs into my hip to help get a nice secure hold. So the rest of my grip, my hand, is mostly just helping to make sure that the tongs are staying in place. But otherwise, I'm using my whole arm to get leverage on these tongs and hold on to that piece. So that when I'm over here, I'm holding on to it, and I actually kind of like a lower anvil, because I usually stand with my legs a little bit spread. And so I want these tongs to be at hip height so that I can shove the handles, the reins of the tongs, into my hip to hold on to the material while I'm forging. There are a lot of rules about, what the height of the anvil should be. I don't necessarily believe in those rules. Like, I think you're supposed to be able to stand next to it and put your fist on the surface of the anvil, right? I don't like that, because I'm not standing at the anvil like this. I'm in a power position, basically. Like I played football growing up, so if somebody's gonna come running at me and I was gonna block them, I don't stand there like this and say, stop! I'm gonna spread my legs out and I'm gonna shove my hands into them. And so I kind of do the same thing, like I'm gonna throw a punch almost, but I'm holding the tongs, holding the reins, and I'm shoving those reins into my hip to lock in on that piece and forge on it, especially if I'm gonna hit it hard and especially if it's unsecured. All right, this steel's gotta be hot. Yep. So again, I'm just gonna do a little bit of forging just to flatten that center line of that material. That looks pretty good. I'm holding the tongs, the reins, but I'm really using my arm and my hip to clamp onto this piece while I forge it. Okay. I'm not worried about this long point being a fine point, because I'm going to blunt it anyways. But that is my piece. That's my center line. In fact, if anything, it's a little bit cupped, right? Oops, I just touched the steel accidentally. Anyways, so if I really want to try to flatten that out or straighten that out, I can now lay that cup surface against the surface of my anvil. I'm actually going to heat it up one more time. And I'm going to forge that cupped surface down to the surface of the anvil to flatten it out. Alright, looks like we got a couple comments in here. Got the spring and the second temper blade is ready for bevels. Nice, good job. Little River Forge, nice work. Michael Powers working on a 9-inch mosaic integral, posted it on Discord. Hell yeah, buddy. Go check that out. Little River Forge, I got some V-bits from Texas Select Show that are my new favorite for holding square shapes and bolsters. They're great for that, but kind of only that. Often I'm holding on to rectangular shapes, and so having a pair of tongs that can hold rectangular shapes makes a huge, or is very helpful. Whatever that rectangular shape might be. Maybe you have flat bar stock that you forge from. Maybe you have a common shape that your material takes. Being able to forge tongs that suit the way you work is crucial. We got Coulter Moulton in the house saying hi. What's up, bud? Where are you watching from? We got some people in the house. Thank you for jumping in, saying hi. I'm just gonna do one last tap on this thing, and then we're gonna move on to the other half. All right, let's get this set up. All right, again, that center line is somewhat cupped now, so I'm just gonna hit it gently to flatten that out. That looks pretty great to me. It's a nice straight center line, right? I'll hold it against the black of my shirt, you can see it better. It's a little funky on one side for some reason. Let's see what's going on. That's better. That's better. Yeah, but anyways, I got that center line nice and straight. I'll do a little bit straightening the piece, just so that the next round of forging, it all stays together really nicely. Good. Sweet. We call it good. We got that long point shoved over to the center. Now we're going to do the same thing to the other half. I'm going to keep this close as a visual reference for the other piece that I'm forging. Again, I marked the inside corner that I'm going to start with, and I'm going to start forging in to shove that in and bring this tip, this long point around to the center line. So when I put it in the forge, I want to put it in the same way I'm going to pull it out, start forging on it. Oh. Put that up there. All right. That's going to take a couple minutes to come to temp, so we're going to come over here and hang out. Let's see, tighten this a bit. It's not messing with me as much. Okay. Whew. What up? I'm offshore at the moment. I figured I'd stop by and see what you were up to. I heard you said you wanted to do more live streaming, which is awesome. Yes, sir. That's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing. What does that mean you're offshore? Are you fishing? Are you in the military? What do you got going on? If you're in the military and you can't tell me, that's fine. I totally understand. Anyways, it's gonna take a couple minutes for that steel to heat up. So, yeah, if anybody's got any questions about how that's getting shoved over or anything that you're not quite understanding, working on an oil rig, I appreciate you hanging out. Anybody's got any quick questions about how this works. I mean, once you've seen it, like I've drawn it and I've kind of talked around it or about it in the Patreon, but I've never actually demoed it. And so this is a chance to actually see it firsthand and how that's working. But like I said, as far as I'm aware, and with the, I guess, with the support of Steve Schwarzer, Master Bladesmith Steve Schwarzer, as well as Master Bladesmith JD Smith, they've concurred with that this is a new process that, as far as they're aware, nobody's done. If somebody has seen somebody doing this, please let me know. I've never seen it, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't been done. Sorry, sweating over here. Okay, I think that's something I try to be careful of when I feel like I've developed something new, is to make sure that there's always a caveat that, even though I haven't seen it, I can't see everything. Not everybody can see everything all at once. And so if somebody somewhere has seen something like this, I'd love to hear it. I think one maker who's doing something somewhat similar to this is Kelly Vermeer Vela, and the way she's making some of her patterns, and she's shoving that pattern over to become the spine, and then she's forging out the knives. But I think she's using a little bit more of, like, especially if you're part of the Patreon, you're familiar with my edge leading forging process, and so I think she's using something a little bit more like that, but maybe a mix of the edge leading forging as well as kind of shoving this tip over kind of situation, and then making her knife from there. The patterns look great. Her work is awesome, so go check her out. I think she just got her Master Smith. I can't remember. She's definitely a journeyman smith. I apologize if I got that wrong. If anybody's curious, these are Madsen glasses. These have been great eye protection. I usually look like a total nerd. I probably look like a total nerd right now, which actually I'm not opposed to. I don't care about that. But I usually don't, I guess what I mean to say is I usually don't like the way I look in glasses, but I like these frames and the way, like, it matches the shape of my head and the width of my face. I got a big old Samoan head, so I'm insecure about it. Okay, the steel's hot. Let's go. Better than the last time. So, I got that corner shoved in, or started to shove that in. Now I'm going to start working this long point over to the center line along this edge. But you can see when I hit the steel, it spreads, right? It's moving around. You can see how it's bulging out. So you do also want to try to manage that. Otherwise, that could become a problem down the road. We don't want it to be. So, as well as the steel staying straight, pretty crucial as well. If it gets too wonky, then you start fighting your steel more than you want, or more than is ideal. So now I'm going to turn it over, and I start working this point over. Oh, shit. Drop the steel in the floor. Alright. Woo! Yeah, but it is hot in here. I'm starting to get hungry. Let's see, who else is in here? We got a few people in here. We got a few people in here. Jump in and say what's up. Actually, I'm gonna jump over to the Patreon real quick. I don't know what that does to the live stream. Ooh, Toy Crawler, see, what's up? I wish that I understood what the pattern looks like. Yeah, it's kind of tricky. Steel's heating up still a little bit. So, I'll try to draw this. It's kind of tricky to draw. Kind of abstract to draw. Okay. So in the original stack, our steel was square. I'm not going to draw all the details because that's going to take too long. And then we forged, or our pattern is S's. Right? So they're S's like this. And then I intentionally forged it into a parallelogram out of square. To try to exacerbate the curvature of those S's. Okay. Now, we're working on shoving that point to the center line to make a piece that looks like this. Sorry, this might take a second to draw this. Line, 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 line. So it's kind of cause this, especially this topped out, because this is the inside corner, and we're bringing this point over to the center line here, right? So this last tile gets shoved up and curved around to this point here. But when I weld this back together, this is not going to become the point. It could become the point of the knife. What's actually kind of nice is when you book match them across the center line, either end can become the point. Normally on my knives, when I do this, I've done this a few times now, this becomes the point of the knife, but this is actually going to become the bolster. This is going to become the point of the knife. So, tip, tang, right? And I know it's written backwards to you guys, sorry about that. But anyways, that is how that pattern, so that as I forge this pattern out into a knife, it's going to exaggerate that angular activity even more. Okay. Steel's hot, I'm sure of it. Watch some forging. Okay. Woo. Very hot. Okay. Now I'm going to work on pushing that point down. It's a very stressful process or thing to do to your steel. Starting to push it off that straight line that it was on before. It's starting to go that way a little bit. Because the material is so thick, it's hard to do this when the steel is too cold, so I'm going to put it back in the forge. Fuck. Every time I drop it in there, I keep knocking it over. I need it to stand up on edge. eventually though, let's see if I can capture this. Because I can kind of see the pattern in that last tile wrapping around to the point. You guys see that? Anyways, kind of cool. I'll be right back. Let me just get this steel back in there. There we go. All right. Oh, I see what I did there. That's tight. Okay. Whew. Thank you for all that you share and that you do for this craft. That's so freaking cool. Yeah, heck yeah, toy crawler. Don't overheat your billet. Yeah, good call. No, I have my billet, my forge dialed back so that it won't overheat. The forge is only running at like 2100 degrees. I mean, eventually you could cook the shit out of it, but by bringing the temperature down, I have a little bit more wiggle room, I guess, in regards to how much time I let the billet sit in there. I do want to forge it when it's hot, but if I forget about it, which I often do, because I distract myself doing something else, like talking to people or doing something over there and somewhere else in the shop, grinding on a blade, whatever. It's not the end of the world if I come back 5 minutes late. 5 minutes feels like a long time. It's not that terrible. Not that big of a deal. Let's take a look. It's already back up or close to temperature. We're gonna give it one more minute. We'll start forging again. Woo! It is warm standing next to this forge. I'll tell you what. Hopefully the audio isn't too terrible. I know it's loud because the forge is right here. But man, I was looking at the first video that I did, the first live stream. The audio is absolutely terrible, and that's because it was coming through my hearing protection. I forgot to turn my hearing protection off. I actually forgot my hearing protection in general today. Thankfully, I'm not forging too loud. But anyways, but yeah, it sounded really horrible. So I apologize for that. I am trying to figure out a whole lapel mic situation so that this isn't as gnarly as it has been. Thank you, Michael Powell. I appreciate it. So let's get back in there. Get that anvil in view. Let's see. There. Center line. This edge is the center line, so I'm working to shove that long point over. I shoved in that inside corner, and now I'm pushing that long point over. So it'll probably be a couple more heats, but we'll get it shoved over and rocking and rolling. Hey, I didn't knock it over this time. I just wanted to show people again what I'm trying to do. I mean, I drew it, but what I'm trying to do is this. I'm trying to make two matching pieces. They don't necessarily, the curves don't have to match exactly. I mean, that would be ideal, but it's not necessary. They're pretty close, but it's not perfect. But what is really important to me is their length from this point to this point, because I want the pattern to match in the middle as best as possible. I could get them both forged to where that long point shoved to the center line, but if one's way longer than the other for whatever reason, imagine they have the same length at the heel, but one's even honestly just a little bit longer than the other one, that pattern's not gonna match in the middle, man. So you gotta forge them so they match as best as possible in that center line, lengthwise, from tip to tail. So I'm gonna pull my first one down here. The first one I forged, I'm gonna pull that down and use that as a visual reference while I'm working to compare my second piece to. Woo. Hot. Hot, hot, hot. Let's see. The mic doesn't pick up. The mic doesn't pick up too much unless it's grinding. Someone on our Discord uses some cheap DeWalt hearing protection earbuds. They seem to work fine. Interesting. I'll have to take a look at those for sure. Okay. Now, see, definitely at my center line. So, now I'm comparing the length. I think the new one, the second one's just a little shorter. Here, I'll show you guys. The second one is just a little shorter than the new one. You see out at the tip there, right? So, I'm just gonna do a little work to forge this second one down to match the first one. You can also see that the first one's a little bit narrower than the second one. And so I'm just gonna do what I gotta do. Get it the match. That's the plan. Let's go. That's the plan. All right. Hot. All right. That there again. Back up. Okay. Apparently it was leaning against a hot piece of steel. How thick are the two pieces? So they start at about half an inch. If you go much thicker than that, it's really hard. So the thicker the material is, the harder it is to move over. The thinner the material, the easier. Now, because they are book matched to each other, and you eventually want to forge weld them back together, if they're any narrower than a quarter of an inch even might be pushing it. When you go for that final forge weld down the center line, oh, ouch. You go for that final forge weld down the center line, and they're too thin, the chances of the material buckling on you, especially if it's tall, is going to be high. I like to have a little width in my material so that I can control the width a little bit better, especially for chef's knives. But if you want to have this height, I guess, I keep calling it width, but this height, you need thickness here. And so I found that at least about a half an inch or a centimeter thick is a nice stable thickness for, and I'm going to true these aren't perfectly flat and parallel to each other. So I'm going to true these up, flatten them out, and then I'm going to TIG weld them all the way around this new weld seam to close it off, and then I'm going to forge weld them back together. But yeah, half an inch is nice. I can still shove that material over. You can even, for whatever reason, if you need more material, and say, because getting hot, this is a fixed dimension, right? I've reduced this down. This is kind of a fixed dimension. Say I'm forging a really big knife and I need more material. I actually have to cut off more than half an inch. I have to cut off, say, 5/8. or 9/16, whatever it is. Even that 9/16 can make a difference in how difficult it is to shove that long point around that inside corner. You can cut off however thick you need, reduce it down in your forging press or in your hammer to 1/2 inch thickness, and then go through this process. That's it. If you know which end is going to become the bolster, especially if it's this angled in, let's see. If you know it's going to be, this is, say, this right edge is the center line. If you know this is going to be your bolster, you can actually keep that thick and just forge out like the front third or whatever. That's going to become that tip, because that way that you can you can get that material to or to move around that pivot point. You get that long point to come around that inside corner at 1/2 inch while still having your thickness back in the bolster. But that would require you to make quite a large knife. Like even this right here, this will forge out at least into a 10-inch chef's knife, if not longer. It's gonna be freaking massive, but that's all right. All right, do a little bit more forging. Will you forge tang material? I will not, because at that point, I'm gonna have a point on the bottom of the bar, and so some of the pattern material might end up in the tang. Or if I do a threaded tang, then I don't have to worry about that. I'll just forge a bolster and then forge the rest of the knife and not have a tang. And then I'll drill and tap the bottom of that bolster, and then I'll have all thread as my tang. Like I said, I basically have that center line, but it's a little bit taller, so I'm gonna narrow it up. This will help to elongate, fill it a little bit. I'll refine that center point a little bit too. Doesn't have to be super refined. Checking that center weld joint to make sure I'm staying at about that 1/2 inch thickness. It's not the end of the world if I'm a little bit over, but if I'm a little bit under, that's going to put me in a tough spot. Ouch. All right, I'm going to compare them again. Let's see how they look. Hey, that's not too shabby. So, show you what we got here. This is what we got. Now I can keep fussing with this, of course, to like dial in the straightness of that center line. But the hard part of pivoting that pattern around that inside line is done. Let's see if I can zoom in here. I'm sorry, my hands are so shaky right now. Just trying to see if you can see that pattern. So, anyways, that's that. We got it welded, or not welded, but forged over. So the next step is to forge weld those two halves together. Clean up, or sorry, before I forge weld those halves together, I need to clean the material up. Here, actually, I'm gonna shut the forge off. I feel like I'm yelling. Actually, do it the right way. Gas first. All right. Whew. All right. We did it. Will you forge tang material? No. Okay. So yeah, I won't be forging tang material on. And so when I'm setting this weld, this material is like at least 2 inches wide, if not wider. So I'll probably, once I set that weld between those two halves, I'm gonna reduce it probably down to from 2 or whatever it's at, down to about 1.25 inches, maybe about 1.5 inches. And then so that it's at least going through about 25% to 30% reduction. But it doesn't have to be more than that necessarily, especially if I do a good job cleaning up those surfaces, they will come back together very readily. If I take it up to a 220 grit, that's great. If I could take the time, take it up to 400, 600, 800, whatever, higher you can get it, the more readily those surfaces will forge weld together. So once you get past the 220, 400 mark, it's pretty easy. Just take a couple minutes and take it up to those higher levels. You're not really removing a ton of material, you're just polishing the steel at that point. So polish it. And you're gonna thank yourself for it. I would suggest though, either using a surface grinder or disc grinder to make sure you're getting very flat surfaces that are mating and welding together. Probably even you could clamp these into a vise and then chuck that onto a surface grinder and make sure you're surfacing them together, making sure you're getting them both true and flat to each other, clamped next to each other. I don't necessarily have that set up, but for people who do, that's not a bad move. It takes a little bit longer, but again, like at this point, I've already live streamed 6-7 hours. It would be idiotic for me to try to save 5 minutes or 20 minutes or even a whole other hour and then cause rather than spending that hour trying to shortcut it and then losing all of that time beforehand. So still crossing my fingers, everything's gonna come out great. We'll see. I'm just trying to think what else. Yeah, so next steps. Clean the steel. TIG fuse weld the entire weld joint, and then forge weld it back together. That's it. So with that said and with that done, I'm gonna say goodbye to all of you. I wish you all a great Labor Day if you're celebrating today. Wherever you're watching from though, I appreciate you and your support. If you go over to the Patreon, not only will you be able to see just all of these kind of together, but I'm doing work to edit previous streams so that it is tightened down to the essentials, the most important parts. So which is, you know, some of these streams are like, I saw one that's like an hour and 30 or 40 minutes. That's gonna get tightened down to probably about 10 minutes. That is a much more suitable resource for people. And that is the goal of making these videos, to make a resource for people, as well as developing a book around the different patterns that I make, my different approaches and techniques, like this one in specific, though by the time the book comes out, people are probably already gonna be using this technique if they see this video, especially those in the Patreon. But cheers to you. Hats off. Thank you for your support. Yeah. So I would love you guys, if you're getting value from this, I would ask one thing of you is your support, not only your support over in the Patreon, but share it with a friend, somebody that you think would get value out of this and appreciate this, as well as telling people about the Patreon. More people we can get in there, the more, I guess, basically support around the development of this book and this content we can get, the more we can get out and get to you. So if we kind of crowdfund that, work together, we can do a lot of this stuff. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna chill out the rest of the day. And I just want to say thank you guys again for being here and hanging out with me and supporting me. And with that, oh, James just jumped in. Thanks for your work and presentation. Louisiana class was great. Hell yeah, James. It was great to meet you and hang out and get to know you and talk with you about knives in Damascus. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you next round when we'll weld up these halves back together. See you later. I don't know what that face was. Anyways, all right. Take care, you guys. Bye. Wait, how do I get out of here? How do I go? Where's the door? Sorry, that was goofy. All right, I found it. There's an X, a tiny little X up in the corner. My finger's over it right now. That's where I'm gonna do. All right, see you guys. Bye.